Welcome back, everybody. Derek Sue, your East Oakland advocate. Well, I want to weigh in on the Oakland Unified School District teacher strike. I support the teachers. The school district, they can do better than what they have. I also understand their position, but also they need to go and look for money instead of cutting programs like they've done. And I'm talking from the side of a parent of a stepchild, because my stepson, he was raised predominantly and exclusively in the Alameda school district on that small island while we were there. And even the short time that we lived in Oakland, we still maintained him in Alameda schools. And because he was a top-notch athlete, and Oakland did not have the programs nor the curricular that supported his, at that time, his quest for an Olympic position. And that was his tryouts were for the Sydney, Australia. So I support the teachers in the sense that from a step child or step parent perspective, but also I know how much it affects the students, because back in 1978, my class here in Oakland Public School Systems, at the time, it was before Oakland Unified School District, but it was Oakland Public School District back in the 70s when I attended. And we had the very, very first school district strike, and it lasted more than one grading period. It actually rolled into a second grading period, and we had some good teachers. I support all the great teachers that had a lot to do with my upbringing, my education. One of the best teachers I had not only influenced my writing and talking style, that was Mrs. Nakamura. She was my English teacher from Frick Junior High School in East Oakland. And then when I graduated from Frick Junior High in 1975, I moved to Oakland High. My parents used my grandparents' address to get me into Oakland, transferred into Oakland High School. And I wasn't the only one that transferred from Frick Junior High. I had another several classmates actually followed me to Oakland High from Frick Junior High, and it was, so I wasn't the only family kind of cheating the system as today would be. That's what it would be called, but school was very different back then, and so anyway, I was a really good student at Oakland High, and one of the things that I wanted to say that it really influenced the grading system for all of those like myself who were seniors that year. But one of the good things for me is that I had already attained all the credits and class requirements that were required back then. So I already had graduated. I had everything that was necessary to graduate when I had completed my junior year at Oakland High School. So a very different building also. It was the old building. I mean, this structure was ancient, but it had a lot of character to the building, and it was, they were saying that it might fall down in the event of an earthquake. And so, the years that I was at Oakland High School, we had this the dugout, the the pre-dig for the foundation of the new building, and it sat dormant for a number of years because there were a lot of project delays and holdups, politicians and funding, and so there were a lot of things that had to be dealt with, and then so we had this big, massive hole, which was for the new main building, and we, back then referred to it as the dinosaur pit, and that was there. It was being dug out in when I entered summer school there at Oakland High School in the summer of 1975, going into my sophomore year in Oakland High in September. And September 1975 to June 76, that was my sophomore year at Oakland High School, but I attended summer school at Oakland High School to get rid of one of those nasty little requirements for graduation. And so for pre-high school, I took class, and my sophomore year, right after I moved to junior, I took another class, summer school class, and then after my junior year, I took the final and last requirement that I needed to graduate, and there were several other students, those of us that were on the more advanced track and had higher GPAs. We all were in the same thing, and some of the folks there, they were a little bit older than me, a year older, and so it behooved them to go ahead and advance the way that they did, and they went into either a community college or went on to a university. I wasn't one of those that wanted to go to a university, but the teacher strike, it was an example, because an example of futility, and the teacher that I had, I'm sure she's long since deceased. She was a terrible teacher. She had no experience and no business teaching the newspaper staff. I was a photojournalist in the class, and so she didn't know anything about photography. And she knew even less about journalism. She tried to talk about journalism, and we had a journalism class, but there was just nothing, because being a photojournalist, and she adds nothing to my repertoire. But one of the things that I did enjoy about being the photojournalist for the newspaper staff was that I had a pass, off-campus pass, so that I can go develop the pictures that were going to be used in the school newspaper, the twice a month school newspaper that we published. And so it was my responsibility to not only take those pictures, but to develop them. And then for sporting events, I attended a lot of sporting events. And this was in my senior year. And I say my senior year, I didn't really need to go to Oakland High. Well, it was what I called my fuck off year. And so while I didn't need to go to Oakland High for class for anything, I took classes that I wanted to take and that I wanted to enjoy. But there was one class that did have some meaningful outcome for me, and that was the advanced electronics class. And that started with an A period. So I had to be there before 6 o'clock in the morning. and it was a double period, and so the period ran back to back, and so you had A period, and then it coincided with first period. So A and first period were my first class, and so I was at school before 6 o'clock in the morning for A period, and this was advanced electronics back then, and the electronics industry was a fledgling industry at that point, and they were looking for people to come into the industry. And when I finished this class, I actually had a certificate which was valid for the industry as an assembler. So if I went into the job market and I didn't see a path into college or a university, this was my path into the work world. And this is what has been removed from our schools, unfortunately, an alternate path, because not everybody goes to community college, not everybody goes into university. And I was one of those that took an alternate path, and while I was offered an incredible scholarship, and my parents darn near killed me for turning it down and everything, but my path was very different than what they were hoping for me. And like I said, I was a pretty free spirit, and with an off-campus pass from Oakland High, so that gave me pretty much freedom to go in and out of class. And plus, I didn't have a full day of class anyway. My day ended at lunch, and so I had first A period, first period, second period, and third period. So A and 1 was advanced electronics. Second period was the newspaper staff. Sorry about that. And so and trying to stay conscious with a teacher who has no clue as to what they're doing. And this is coming from, at the time, a 16-year-old. Because I was getting ready to turn 17 for my junior year. But she didn't know that much. And her name was Ms. Cadden. And she had big fluffy hair, blonde-haired woman, and I mean a scatterbrain. And I have a very low tolerance for people like that, unfortunately. And so I missed the majority of her classes. But then there was also a reason. There was a school strike going on, and she wasn't teaching. She wasn't there in school. In fact, most of us did not cross the picket line as students. I didn't cross the picket line in support of the teachers back then, and they deserved more pay. And so I had also some backup photographers. One of those backup photographers actually followed me from Frick Junior High. So if you're listening, James Robinson, you remember, we always used to talk slot cars, and then when we got into high school, we were talking cameras. And then another backup photographer that we had was my cousin's girlfriend at the time. That was Donna. And then we had from the yearbook staff that year, some of you may remember the name Wendy Hanamura. Well, she went to school. She was a year right behind me. She worked on the yearbook staff at the time. She went on with a full ride to Harvard. And then when she graduated Harvard, she came back here. She spent a little bit of time as an on-air anchor for KPIX TV in San Francisco. Then she moved on to KQED, and then that's when I lost track of what Wendy was doing. But it was great following her career back then, and being associated with somebody so famous that did so much in the TV and education arena for TV. So it was fun growing up and watching Wendy develop on TV. So, but one of the things that year, if you go back, if you were able to get hold of Oakland High's yearbook, 1978, class of 1978 yearbook, 50% of those pictures inside that yearbook were my photographs that I took throughout the year. And in fact, I think some of the last photos that went to the final were submitted in February, so that everything could be properly printed and then get back to the school and then distributed those yearbooks to each student. And so it was a proud moment for me. I was looking through the yearbooks like, oh my God, another one. And as a photojournalist and having no help from Miss Cadden, and then I was bored out of my gourd with the lack of her teaching. And then when she did come back, she was all over me. She was one of those previous racist little teachers that I had encountered through my early life, and now this one came back to haunt me in my final life. And she said, if you attend the final 2 weeks of class, I will pass you with a C. If you so much as miss one day, I will give you an F for your final grade, and I hope it hurts you. I'm thinking, well, no, it's not going to hurt me. It won't make a stick of difference to me. So inside, I'm laughing in her face, saying, yeah, go ahead, give me an F like I care. But I said, you know what? I don't believe a word this little racist bitch is saying, but I'm going to do what she said. And I attended all 14 classes, the last 14 classes of the school year, without fail, and I was never late. And yet when my report card, my final senior report card came out, Miss Cadden gave me an F. Yeah, like, I didn't expect her to give me a C, because that's the kind of relationship that we had. We had a very adversarial relationship, and she was very racist about things. And at the time, because the school strike was going on, and there was no way for me to file a complaint against this teacher. And then from what I understood, she did not come back to Oakland High the following year for the new school year. So the next class, like Wendy Hanamura and others that were behind me, they didn't have to deal with that crazy woman anymore, who didn't know anything. She wasn't really teaching anything that you couldn't pick up from just looking at the newspaper or looking at TV. And so she was one of those bad teachers that happened to get into the system, and that hopefully that there's enough checks and balances that the system is able to weed out the bad teachers like that. But good teachers like Mrs. Nakamura that I had, and then I had Mrs. Carolyn Smith. She was a history and math teacher, and then Mr. Theodore Smith. He was a history buff, a history teacher. So there were a lot of good teachers that have helped pave my path, and that's why I support teachers, and I want them to get a fair wage so that they can stay here in Oakland. But it was an ordeal. And like I said, the only good thing about it was that I didn't need to attend my senior year, but I was glad that I did. And I experienced my senior year, senior ball, and a lot of the fanfare that comes with graduating from high school. And so there was some really good times there, and some really scary times. But these were all experiences, and they happened because of the Oakland teacher strike. And the first one, I was a senior at Oakland High School here in Oakland for the very first one, and I got to report on that. I was a photojournalist, and we had some great writers back then, and I hope that they see this and it brings back some memories. Thanks for joining me today. We'll be right back.